of us have heard the term the world's best kept secret. Well, that's the opposite of what you want to do in marketing. In marketing, you want to have the brand that you are, the club that you own, be the one that everyone talks about, that everyone identifies with, and everyone wants to be a part of. My name is Marisa Hoff, and I'm the Director of Operations for the Empower Group. We are a full-service consulting firm specializing in employee engagement. And today I want to share with you some trends for marketing in 2022. In my years of experience in the fitness industry, I've come across many clubs that do have marketing departments or marketing directors that are specifically in charge of that. But if you are anything like me, you might have been a small business general manager or owner in which you had to wear a lot of different hats, including the one of head of marketing. And we know that can be tough, especially because trends come and go in the marketing industry and it's hard to keep up with them. And post-pandemic, many of us are working with leaner staffs. The good news about this is today I'm going to share with you 4 trends for marketing in 2022 that are relatively simple and inexpensive to implement. The 4 trends I will share with you today are the use of micro-influencers, using links in your Instagram stories, the use of SMS marketing, and implementing brand accessibility. Most of us are familiar with influencers in social media, people like The Rock or Kim Kardashian. They have millions of followers and telling us about all the great products that they have. Well, this is a similar concept, but a micro-influencer is someone that's going to be at your club. They're going to have a smaller following. They don't need to have millions or thousands. And in essence, they are great brand ambassadors for your club. So why? Well, one is they don't need to have a ton of followers. They could have 1,000 versus 10,000 or 1,000,000. 2, they come off as credible and authentic. If The Rock is telling me about something that he's purchasing, I don't relate to that. But if the woman that I'm working out in the bar class next to me tells me about it, then I have a tendency to relate and believe her when she's telling me stuff. And it's really not expensive. So when we ran our clubs, we gave people complimentary memberships and also some brand gear that they could sport around town and be just a part of our club community. And finally, one of the great things about micro-influencers is that they get really great engagement. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to find brand ambassadors or micro-influencers in your club, but it's a really great and inexpensive way to market yourself. So here are a few tips for working with or finding micro-influencers. Start small. So you may want to select 1 or 2 people for a short trial period of time. It could be anything from 1 month to a 3-month trial period. And I recommend picking different types of people, especially if you have a multi-service club. So perhaps it might be someone who attends Group X classes in addition to someone who just comes in to lift weights. The second tip is, for sure you want to pick an active member, someone who comes to your club regularly and who loves your club. You know them, the ones that are always talking to your front desk staff, that have enthusiasm and post about your club in general. It's someone who is a real fan, and you're better off with someone who really loves you and has fewer followers than someone who has a lot of followers but really isn't into you. You do want to look at their social media and you want to make sure that they have followers, post often. My guess is that there are people in your club that love social media and are constantly posting selfies about themselves anyway. They love the medium and you're going to exploit that. Next, you want to make sure that you outline your expectations clearly. What do you expect from them? They need to follow you, obviously. They need to post about you a certain number of times. Make sure that you ask them to come to your events. And you might even do things like have them make a video testimonial for you to post on your social. Just make sure it's spelled out and that you form some sort of agreement that details exactly what they get in return for what you're asking them to do. And finally, give them feedback. Make sure that just like any employee that you have, that you give them constant communication and appreciation for what they're doing for you. Engage with their posts as a brand and show them lots of love. So now you know a little bit more about micro-influencers, why they're a great opportunity for you and your health club, and some tips for getting started. Now, Before we move on to the next segment, take 30 seconds and write down 2 or 3 people that come to mind that you could ask to be micro-influencers for your brand. So we know that 90% of people on Instagram follow a business. So marketers use Instagram to drive awareness, build engagement, and create communities. But now more and more marketers are unlocking features to help do things like generate leads and sales. It used to be that we could only have one link, generally to our website, in the bio of our Instagram profile. Last fall, Instagram premiered a new feature that previously had only been available to people who had 10,000 or more followers, which was not most of us. So they allowed us to start using links in our Instagram stories. And that is going to be a great tool for us to market with in 2022. Here are a few tips for working with your link stickers. So one, you want to be strategic about your link. Think big picture when you're planning out your story content. If you're trying out a new referral program, then try focusing on those links for that period of time. As this is a relatively new feature for Instagram stories, it's important that every story you have has a clear call to action on that sticker. Some people don't even know what to do with that. So you might have to say, tap here or sign up now to direct people and tell them exactly what to do. Another tip is you want to consider using the tiny URL or URL shorteners. So if, let's say, I was going to go to your website and copy the link to your class schedule, it might be a string of words and letters that's really long, and that's a little bit off-putting. So what you can do is upload that link to a free site, for instance, tiny URL, and condense that long thing of letters to a small one. And it looks a lot better, and it makes it even possible for you to create your own branded one. So use those instead of that long string of letters in your Instagram story. Another tip is make sure that when you're doing this, you're checking your metrics. So who's tapping on those links? And do this consistently so you know what's working and what's not and what you want to do more of. My last tip has to do with those stories that are performing well, is put those in your highlights. So the highlights are the archive stories, so stories that you can keep on your profile permanently. So you might be able to create one highlight that talks about cool gear that you have. And every time you have a story promoting a new t-shirt or water bottle, you can put those stories in your highlight, label it shop, and people can go to your profile to shop from those links. To add a link in your story, you're going to open up Instagram. Once you're there, you're going to go to the plus button at the top and select story. From there, you'll select a picture or a blank canvas. I'm going to pick Sal here and Chris, and go to the sticker button. And of all these options, you're going to have the one that says link. Select that. I'd already copied the link that I wanted, so now I'm going to paste it in and select done. From there, you can change the appearance of this sticker. You can make it smaller, you can make it bigger, add any other elements that you want to add, and then hit story to send it to your story. All right, so now you know about links and stories and the fact that a lot of us get to use them. You know why they're beneficial. So take a second here and think about a couple ideas that you can implement right away to use links in your stories. Now let's move away from social media and head into the area of SMS marketing. Now that's not new. Texting is something that we've been doing for a while in the fitness industry, but 2022 is going to be the year where a lot of marketers really step up their texting game. We know that 89% of consumers want to receive text from brands, and that overall, texts are about 7 times opened up more, if that's such a thing, as email. So they have a much higher engagement rate. So we definitely need to consider texting as one of the channels that we use for marketing. So a few tips for working with SMS. One, first and foremost, you're going to definitely want to know the law, whether it's in your state or country, for how you use text messaging. There's something called the TCPA that requires businesses to receive express written consent from individuals before calling or texting. So what that means is you don't just get a phone number and start texting away. There has to be specific language either on your website or in your forms or agreements that you intend to use texting as a form of communication and marketing. Secondly, texting is going to be part of the omni-channel approach. That's another thing that we keep hearing a lot about. So it may be that you have a Facebook campaign and then you collect emails, and from there, with the email, you also have a text feature where you text people and give them some of the information. So you're targeting in many different ways. For instance, some apps allow brands to collect cell phone numbers by email. So it could be that you're getting that and sending off one-off campaigns. The next one is that you have to combine automation and personalization. We all know when we're getting that automated text. Let's say someone signs up for a guest pass on your website. They're going to get an immediate text which says, "Thank you for signing up. We really appreciate it, blah, blah, blah." They know that's automated, but then your salespeople can personalize it and say, "Hey, Marisa, we're so glad that you're interested in coming over to Row House," or whatever your brand is. We definitely want to see you. Let's talk about a time when you can come in. You also want to target your current members by interest. So for example, you can text a group of moms, let's say because you're opening a swim school and you want to let them know. Or you might have had a handful of people that were interested in pickleball and you're going to start a small group pickleball. You can text them to let them know about that. Finally, and most importantly, want to make sure that you have a way to either reply via text or monitor that so that there's a way to engage with people. If you just send something out without a way to interact with people, that's a big no-no. So now you know a little bit about why texting is going to be one of the trends for 2022, and you have some ideas about how it's getting used and why it's beneficial. Take some time right now and think about one way in which you can start implementing some text campaigns into your marketing for this year. Brand accessibility has become a really big buzzword for marketing in 2022. So what do I mean by accessibility? Overall, it's about becoming more inclusive in your brand. And it can be something as simple as adding alt text to your images or adding captions to your videos or subtitles, as some people might call them. Overall, this is going to help SEO. A lot of brands are also moving away from those stock images that we have a tendency to use of the young, fit models and moving to a more authentic look. This not only will help build and foster relationships with your current members, but it will help prospects see themselves at your club. And overall, isn't that a good thing? Here are a few tips regarding how to do accessibility for your brand. The first is to use images that reflect diversity. We saw an increase in social activism in 2020, and it spotlighted a lack of diversity overall and specifically in our industry. On a side note, it should be noted that diversity and inclusion should not be a trend. It should be more of a standard practice. And it's not just about the images on social media or your website. It needs to be built around the culture of your club. That being said, diversity also means using images of people of different ages, abilities, as well as people of all spectrums of color. The second one is to include alternative text. Alternative text is a short, detailed description of what is shown in a particular photo. So if you're uploading something onto your website or even on social, it gives you the ability to describe it. And for people that are seeing impaired that use screen readers, it would tell them image of older woman lifting weights with another personal trainer at her side. And that's something that should be easy to do across all major platforms because they support it. Plus, not to mention, this all helps with your SEO. You also want to add closed captions. For people with hearing loss, closed captioning is essential to their understanding of the videos. It's different than subtitles, which provide text for the dialogue. So it might show like background music and it'll say background music, or audio cues like doorbells or loud crashes. All of those are great And they're also helpful for people who speak other languages. The third tip is capitalizing hashtags. That's one of the simplest ways to improve accessibility is by capitalizing the first letter of each word when using a hashtag. This is also called camel case. So when people use screen readers, the software can read the capital letters as separate words rather than a string of letters. And that's so easy to do. And finally, the last thing has to do with links. So when you're designing your actual website or your newsletter, we often use hyperlinks to drive traffic to different areas, to landing pages, to our website. And aesthetically, we have a tendency to keep them in the same color or not make them stand out, but that is difficult for people with different abilities. The best practice is to underline them or use other text formatting features like bold so that they really contrast. When using color to indicate links, don't use one that's exactly like the main text. You really want to use a contrast of color. By the way, that's a great tip for your website in general. Contrasting colors really help people of different abilities read your website easily. So those are a few tips that you can start using, but there are lots of tools out there for accessibility. I suggest just Googling them and you'll find a lot to help you with that. So now we learned a little bit more about brand accessibility and what it is and how to do that. And one thing to keep in mind is that it may not seem like marketing, but what accessibility does is opening up the channels to different kinds of people who belong in your club. Yes, you're going to be opening the door for people who previously may not have seen themselves as a part of your club. So not only is that a great marketing practice, but it's good practice overall. Now, think about your club, your marketing. Where are two different places where you can start to implement a little bit more brand accessibility? Write those down. So those were 4 of the marketing trends for 2022. We talked about why micro-influencers are a great source of marketing for your club. We also talked about how you can use your links and stories to drive traffic and generate sales. We talked about how you're going to start using text marketing and incorporating it into your overall strategy. And we finished with brand accessibility and different ways that you can make yourself and your club more accessible to people. Thank you so much for joining me today and learning about 4 marketing trends that are up and coming in 2022. I want to thank you for taking the time, and I also want to thank Club Industry for having me. I gave you some tangible tips and tools. My suggestion to you is take this learning and do something. Once you learn, then you take action, then you have the ability to impact someone's life. Thanks for joining me.